Hello, everyone, and welcome. We're back on YouTube and LinkedIn Live for another exciting episode of the Top Innovator Series. That's where we bring leadership ideas to life, and of course, we share the journeys behind the brilliant minds that create these journeys. With us today is Ron Blahnik. Ron is currently leading an IT consulting practice. Recently, he's been a CIO, SVP of strategy, and held many other tech executive roles for companies including JD Sport, Hibbett Sports, and the Home Depot. And today, it's a pleasure to have him with us. Ron, it's great to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me.
Ron, let's dive into the topic of leadership and your leadership journey. Clearly, a super established journey and very successful. When you reflect on your own journey, Ron, what do you think are some of the ingredients for the success that you've had?
Well, making choices, remaining focused, and remembering that it's a journey, not just a destination. And so you'll make many, many choices throughout your career that you may begin to question, but they all lead someplace. And one thing that it leads to is wisdom and experience. All those things are applicable no matter what role you take, no matter what organization you work in. The idea of learning, curiosity, those are the things that lead to success long term.
Let me dig deeper into the making choices. I thought it was interesting that you led with that. Here is what I take from that. First of all, there's an intentionality about the decisions that you're making. And of course, there must be some kind of intuitive or maybe explicit decision guide rubric around that. Say a bit more about that.
Well, I'll take you back. It's 47 plus years. I'm a young high school kid trying to decide what he wants to do.
Okay.
You can't see me on camera in terms of my height, but I'm 6'8", and I was that height at
Whoa.
14.
Okay.
So I thought I was going to go to the NBA, and then I played a basketball game and against Lansing Everett when I lived in Michigan, and their starting center happened to be Irving Magic Johnson. And what he managed to do to us on the court in terms of humiliation, he scored 99 points in their 136-46 victory in 48 minutes. Clearly, it was a decision point, right? Am I really going to go to the NBA, or have I just witnessed someone who's going to be in the NBA? And I certainly recognized the greatness that he represented. So it meant shifting courses, right? I'm gonna have to buckle down and study. Not that I wasn't studying; I was a good student, but recognizing that that wasn't going to be a fallback for me. It
Mm-hmm.
was going to be my primary. The second thing was how was I going to get there? And so, I was one of 9 children. Certainly, we didn't have the financial position to allow all of us to be going to college, and there would have been 5 of us in college at the same time. So I went to the Army to get my education in data processing and programming and analysis and that kind of thing. And that was a key decision point, and that was made by the time I was 18. And the third decision I made was what was going to be my career destination. And after research, I decided I wanted to be a sitting CIO at some point in my career,
Mm-hmm.
recognizing that that's a ways
Mm-hmm.
off, but you got to have a long-term goal in mind. And I started setting my short-term strategies around achieving the long-term goal. So making choices, staying clear to those
Mm-hmm.
choices. Just something that I resolved at 17. I was going to be a sitting CIO. It took me many, many years to get there, but I never lost sight of the goal.
That's an early decision to make, my word, and quite the far-reaching decision.
Well, I would add one more decision to that, and that
Okay.
is picking a life partner. So
Yeah.
even Warren Buffett says, your biggest decision in your life will be your life partner. Mine
Yeah.
happens to be one that was hugely supportive of myself, my career, my destination, and without her, I would certainly not be sitting where I am today.
Yeah.
So having a life partner that knows how to put up with what it takes in terms
Yeah.
of commitment. A lot of times, leadership is not a 40-hour-a-week job. You got to deal with folks during the day, and you still have got other things you must accomplish. And so those can stretch into nights and weekends, and that's all a part of the journey for us,
Yeah.
for me at least.
Yeah. And I imagine that's also a decision that was made many years ago, the life partner decision.
Yes,
So,
at 22.
Mm.
So
So
yeah, we've
it
been
sounds like,
married
right,
for over 40 years.
if I put this together, key decisions much earlier in life, and then a lot of execution around this, and no doubt adapting, no doubt tweaking, no doubt having short-term goals. But it
Mhm.
really sounds like key decisions early on and then execution. Is that the recipe?
That
Is
is
that?
absolutely a good summation of it. When I talk to
Mm,
college students, and I did a lot of recruiting in my career, they often didn't know what they wanted to go to college
mm-hmm,
for, and their freshman, sophomore, junior years even. And I said, once you lock in on something that you want to do, because you're going to be doing it for the next 40 years,
mm-hmm,
all right? It's your waking hours for the next
yep,
40 years are going to be spent on a career journey. Pick something that you actually have some passion around, that you
yep,
really like to do. Don't make it about the money, make it about the work. The money will follow.
mm,
And so I was fortunate to be able to make those choices very, very young.
yep.
I coach folks that have struggled with that choice.
It was exactly the question I was asking, about to ask. How do you help people make these choices? So let's say you have many junior folks that you have on your teams or in your circles, and you look at your own success recipe. How do you get them to make those choices, especially if they may not have the clarity at that point? They may be dabbling in many things. How do you get them there?
Well, the idea of my career is my hobby. So
Mm,
I dabble a lot. And not everybody wants to, right? But what I suggest to folks is do your best to learn from everybody around you. So no matter what role you take on, make it, walk into it like it's your first day and your last. Right. And so the idea is you're working your way out of a job. And how do you do that? Well, you grow people around you and you learn from who you receive information from and who you send information to. Don't just be the pass through, understand the context, because what you're doing now is you're expanding your base of knowledge, which means you could shift left or right because of something you learned by
hmm
working with someone in another field or another department or another discipline. The other thing is to rotate them. The idea is they
mm,
don't know always what they're best at, and sometimes you have to create opportunities for them to learn what they might be more impassioned towards,
yep,
and that's giving them opportunity.
yep. Got it. And it gives them a much better chance to make the right decision on those key
It
points.
has to be their
Yep.
decision. You can't make it for them, and that's always
Yep.
the challenge when well, my dad told me I was going to do this. Great, but what do you want? What do you want to do?
Uh-huh.
And the value in them making that choice is then they become embroiled in that choice. It becomes their choice, their passion, and not trying to fulfill the expectations of a leader or a parent or
Mm.
a guardian or someone in their
Yep.
life.
Yep.
Mhm.
Again, not an easy point for some people to reach, right? To really look for the source of that decision in themselves as opposed to in the validation of others.
Well, some of it is also recognizing it's not a job, it's a
Okay.
career.
Okay.
And so the difference, show them the explanation in Webster's. There's a difference between having a job and having a career. And so a career is something you have to nurture. Job, you go and execute. So I never thought of the work I did as a job. I wasn't going to the job. I wasn't
Mm.
getting up every morning and going to the job. I was getting up every morning and going to further expand my career opportunities, right? And those around me.
Nice. Nice.
Mhm.
I'd like to take another look at your leadership journey and look at it from a different perspective. No doubt you had many trusted advisors, mentors, people who were on your journey who were important to you. Talk to me about some of the advice that you got from them. What stuck with you? What was some advice that you got that was maybe surprising at first or didn't make sense at first and only became good advice with aging, with wisdom, with all of that? Talk to me about the
Well,
mix of advice.
here's the thing when people see people that have grown to an aspirational role, they often think it was an easy path, and
Mm,
it's not always an easy path. Sometimes it's not just what you learn to do well, but what you learn what things you learn not to do. So I worked in a consulting organization from 1985 to 1992.
mhm.
In that organization, actually 1990, yeah, 1996 actually, so 11 years. But in that time, I worked for 23 people.
Okay.
It was a lot of movement, a lot of projects,
That
a lot of
doesn't sound easy.
reform and form and reform. What I tell some folks that I worked with is that of those 23 leaders, I would work for 2 of them again. And so I learned more about what not to do than what to do. From the 2 that I would work for again, I would follow them anywhere. If they picked up the phone and called me today and say, I need some help. Would you come help me? I would be there. And so the understanding that, you have to work for good leaders in order to grow, but you can learn even from a bad leader of things you would not want to repeat, or and ultimately, if you can use some influence, maybe you can help them along their journey. But I would say that some of the best advice I was given was be curious.
Okay.
Be curious, stay curious, read, be voracious in your reading, find time, make time to read and acquire knowledge, not just about your world, but about the worlds of the organizations you work with. So at
Mm-hmm.
the higher level, it's understanding the business of Nike, Adidas, New Balance. Uh, those were companies that we bought lots of product through and sold. But the idea of understanding their business helped me understand how to build and connect ecosystems of supply chains. Ultimately, that drove a great deal of success for the organization and ultimately customer satisfaction. So curiosity is clear. The other one that's probably as important is consistency in leadership. Don't have to raise your voice to get results. I remember my father, whose
Mm-hmm.
octave would always go a tone lower and softer when he was very angry,
Mm-hmm.
because he wanted me to hear and wanted me to
Mm-hmm.
listen. And so, whether it's your father or someone in business, I think it's important to understand that the growth of both you and them is mutual, is symbiotic, right? You can work for people that will give you lots of free reign to succeed and fail, and then you'll work for folks that will coach you and direct you along the way, and you may feel like they're micromanaging. Don't take the extra attention you get as negative. Take it as a positive. They're showing interest. They want you to be successful. It's important for you to be successful, and they don't want you to have to learn the hard way, perhaps how they learned. And
Mm-hmm.
so, you know, ultimately, as much as being a leader, you have to be a follower, right?
Mm-hmm.
In order to be a good leader, you have to be a good follower.
Yeah. A couple of things I want to dig a bit deeper into. So you said 2 leaders you would follow again, 2 out of 23, about 10%. What I hear in there is almost a call to have or to look for more leaders, right? To look for, if you want to grow, change leaders more often or expose yourself to the leadership of more people to get that experience. Would you
Well,
agree with that?
they
Or
often say they often say people don't quit companies; they quit leaders.
mm,
And so one would say, why and how did you survive there? Why was that valuable for you to stay? It was
mm,
always a balance, but
mm,
because of the consulting company I was working for was working on, projects in banking, manufacturing, government, you name it, insurance.
mm-hmm,
I was learning so much on these projects that it was worth sort of the pain
mm,
to get the knowledge, to grow the base,
yeah,
to work in different roles and responsibilities. Um, and ultimately, I probably was trained to deal with some of that. I did 20 years in the military. And so I understand what working for folks that are going to be very directive in terms of the nature of which their communication is. And you have to be able to take that
yeah.
into stride, right? Listen for content, listen for context, and don't worry about necessarily the message so much. Everybody has trouble with communication at some level, right? Even Warren Buffett would say, "Yeah, I don't communicate the best in all situations,
Right.
but when he talks, people listen."
Mm-hmm,
And it's because of the message. They're listening for the context and,
mm-hmm,
and the manner in which he delivers it. And so even for myself, it's been a journey in terms of developing my communication style over
yep.
the years. But be honest, be clear, be focused,
Mm-hmm.
uh, not personal. It's professional. It's business. And ultimately, how does it help the people grow? Because ultimately, in order for an organization to grow, you have to grow people,
Mm-hmm.
right? you have to plan for the day that you're no longer going to be there. And I've had to plan for that day. I've had to build succession plans. I've
Mm-hmm.
had to develop leaders. I've had to rotate them into
Mm-hmm.
roles that made them uncomfortable. I called it being, and it was one of the things I picked up along the way, being comfortably uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea is when you get really comfortable, you may stop learning. But what creates that level of uncomfortableness is often I've got a new challenge to face. I have something I have to learn, and ultimately that's part of the growth process, right? And we go through that.
Yep.
That's why the teen years seem to be so difficult for kids, right? And it's because they're going through exponential mental growth at that time.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
Good. We talked about your past leadership journey. I'd like to take a look at today. And again, this is not a question about titles. It's not about companies. It's not about roles, not about projects or products. It's about your leadership journey. So when you look at where you are today, Ron, what are the areas that you need to focus on at the moment in your leadership? You want to focus on what are the areas where you feel this is where you can grow most, or this is an area where you see I can leverage this more.
Well, there's three pillars to the
Hmm.
to my consulting practice. The first is board focused.
Hmm.
So becoming an advisor and being able to communicate with board level folks, providing a perspective that brings my 40 plus years experience to of value. Um, and ultimately learning from them, right? Because that's a two-way
Hmm.
street, right? That there's always something to be learned from people that have been leaders of other large companies. Second is the C-suite, and that's where I spent a lot of the last 8 years with people around the table, leading different disciplines: supply chain, marketing, merchandising,
Hmm.
digital, stores, HR, finance. And the idea is understanding their pain points in their business and
Yep.
helping to enable them to get to a better result for them and their associates. And I think there's a lot I can do in that space as well for other companies.
Hmm.
And then the third is the rising stars. So every HR organization's got a succession plan they've been working on with the senior leadership. The problem is that they may not have the ability in house to complete the development program and product that they want. And so the idea of preparing for an exit of a C-suite member is a big deal. And if you're in a small, medium-sized company, often those people were promoted from within as the company grew. The challenge they've got is they can't necessarily go to market and pay for someone who's had Fortune 1000 experience. And so when someone leaves, they've got to have someone ready. The challenge is us as boomers. I say us, not you, of course. You're much younger,
I'm not.
but me as
Not so sure.
me as a boomer, I'm one of the last of the boomers coming out, born in '59, and so that next generation, the X generation, is got to step up and step in.
Mhm.
And I'm not sure they're entirely ready, but I feel like I have something to offer in terms of helping them get there. And I did that by building a broad base, working in every area of IT,
Mhm.
and every area at the lowest level,
Mhm.
including side steps, laterals, and even step downs to work in different
Yeah.
departments, because I wanted a very, very strong base so that when I sat in the role of a CIO, that I was fully prepared and understood the people that were working for me and how they had to do their jobs.
Yeah.
And that's not always available to everybody today.
Mhm. What do you think will be the main tools that you need to pull from to make sure these three pillars are in place or these three pillars are as strong as possible?
Well, the first and foremost is the experience I've gained.
Mm.
Right, I have a perspective.
Mm.
Second is the learning. Right, there's many books out there. There's literally thousands of books on leadership. Right,
Tons.
which ones do I follow? Which ones have the right tips and the techniques? There's several that I focus on. The 1 Minute Manager is a good book. It's only about 140 pages. It's a quick read. Management and Balance by Michael Ario. That's another very good book. He leverages his military background and puts
Mm.
into a set of experiences around leading people and getting to the right result. And then there's one called Make My Bed, written by an admiral that's recently retired, a Navy SEAL. His whole thing was about the lessons he learned along the way, and they were military lessons, but applied to the
Mhm.
civilian workforce. That's something else I feel like I bring because I've got 20 plus of combined active and reserve duty. Um, And so some of those I brought to the workforce. I remember as a young leader being told by our HR professionals, you need to forget the military. You're not in the military anymore. You're in the civilian world. Um, Thankfully, I didn't. What I did learn how to do was adjust the message to civilian terms, right? So, I used to talk a lot about AARs, after action reviews. So you do something, then you review what went well, what didn't go well, what could we do better next time. That's a military best practice, and I, did it for decades. Now it's something called what now, what, so what, and I've got a what, so what, sorry, what, so what, what's next, and the idea is, what's the problem? What have we identified? Just facts. So what? What does it mean? Who cares? Why is it important? And then what's next, which is, what are you going to do
Mm-hmm.
about it?
Mm-hmm.
It's about taking action,
Mm-hmm.
and not just saying, well, that's the way it's been, or that's the way
Yeah.
we've always done it. That was never more no never so important as when we went through COVID. Our company doubled in size during COVID, in a market and in a business that should have shriveled, and most of our competitors did. But we went to daily stand-ups. We started working from home the very next day, using Teams and other technologies. But the senior leadership team met every day at 11 o'clock, and they did it to make sure we had speed to decision. And so the idea of floating ideas, developing PowerPoints, going off and doing study analysis, that's all great. But when you're dying on the vine, that's not going to probably get you where you need to go. And so the ability to make decisions, best possible decision based on the information we had, with the right people around the table. So everybody had a perspective. And so how would this impact your organization if we did this? And we made decisions every day. And by the end of May, we were up running and in all the stores. And we had been back in the office in a 50-50 arrangement for weeks. And that decision to go to a daily stand-up was something that ended up being something that became a part of the mantra. And to this day, they still do the daily stand-up.
Yeah.
And so the C-suite members taking time out every day, 15 to 30 minutes, just to make sure they're all on the same page. How can I help you? What do you need? Here's how you can help me. Here's what I need. It makes you move at the speed of life. And ultimately, that we it was one of our catchphrases. Speed is life, right? If you can't move fast, someone's going to beat you to the punch.
Someone will be faster.
And win.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
Usain Bolt won races because he took less steps. Now, how did he do that? Right? He perfected a method by which he could extend his stride, and he did that. Secretariat was the same way. Less strides, more distance.
Interesting analogy. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let me ask you one last question, Ron, and then we'll wrap it up. When you look at what many tech leaders are doing, what do you think some of them are missing? What's an area where you feel tech leaders can step up, they can do something different, or you feel like that's sort of a systemic problem in tech leadership at the moment?
Well, for the folks I talk to a great deal, they want to understand, why is it that I don't talk tech?
Okay.
You've been in IT for 40 years. You don't use 3-letter acronyms. Why don't you do that? I said, because I'm a business person.
Okay.
I run IT like a
Mm-hmm.
business. I have a P&L. My job is to find ways to make money for the company and save money for the company. And I do that by working with my business partners, understanding their challenges, and ultimately, how do I help the sales organizations make more money, the supply organizations move product faster, the human organizations to take care of people better, that keeps turnover down. I do those things because that's a part of running a good company. So don't think of yourself in your silo. Think of yourself as part of everybody's silo, right? And I think you'll find you can do a little bit better than perhaps others. The last thing I'll probably leave is chasing shiny pennies is a waste of time. Now, someone would say, "Are you saying AI is a shiny penny?" It is if you don't apply it appropriately. And so when we looked at AI opportunities for our organization, we looked at AI opportunities and ranked them by the ones that could deliver value in some way. It's going to help us save money. It's going to help us serve customers. It's going to help us help us grow the business in some other way, as opposed to just doing AI for AI's sake, right? So find a way to drive an ROI. It's be no different than if you did any other project within IT, within business, right? We had so much capital to spend. We always had to snap a chalk line at some point and say, listen, these projects are not going to make the cut because we just don't have the funding for it. What rose to the top? The ones that deliver the best results. And you can do a lot with AI, but you have to give it some focus and treat it like it's a business product. It's an enabling technology. It's not AI for AI's sake. It's just something that makes another part of your business better.
It's just a tool in the end, right?
That's
all it
just
is.
a tool
It's
in the
not
end.
a
Yep. With a set of
end in itself.
techniques and technologies. Yep.
Awesome. Ron, thank you so much. Really enjoyed the conversation.
I enjoyed it. This is a great conversation.
I'll think back for a long time about the early decisions and the intentionality that you put behind these choices. That is neat because I think many people can benefit from really being very, very clear about the choices instead of making some unconsciously, not even knowing they make it, and then being surprised about the outcome of choices they didn't realize they made. That was awesome. Ron, thank you so much.
You bet. Take care now. Thank you.
To everyone else out there, remember to like, subscribe, comment, and most importantly, join us again for our next episode of the Top Innovator Series. And until then, make sure to keep your brain cells active.